Kids, Uncle Doug's going to tell you a story.
There's the consuming side of it, like right. So it's different how we consume it. Obviously, different how they make them too.
We've done so much sports, video games. I love all that, but I am a movie junkie at heart.
The thing that matters today, it feels like, is streams and how many people are watching it, how many eyeballs, how many rewatches. Whereas back then, like, it was ticket sales. The physical media sales are completely gone. I say completely, they're still happening, but like not nearly as much as they were back then. Sounds so good.
It does.
Doesn't matter what day of the week. It's almost like one of those things. I feel like I should be listening to it on a Monday because it just gets me going.
That's right.
You know?
That should be your Monday morning music, right? You know what else
Oh.
gets you up in the morning? A big Kahuna burger and a Sprite.
Absolutely. It's good stuff, man. Oh, well, if that doesn't set us up. And so you're on point, right? I'm a little
oh
this is a
yeah.
bit of a stretch. Jurassic Park 93, like,
Mm-hmm.
summer blockbusters. I don't know. It's close enough. It's as close as I can get.
Yeah, it was
Something like that.
probably in the Dollar Theater in January still. It was huge, man.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
So no, it's awesome. To be able to talk movies, and I want to go back to the music real quick because I had a thought. I caught
Yeah.
myself. I'd have to go back and watch, but like I caught myself singing to it in one of our intros. As I'm
Nice.
editing these, going back and listening to these, I don't know if I was lip syncing. My mic might have been down, but I caught myself singing to the music. So like, really does get you.
It really does. It really does. And I will add this as well, as Samuel L. is in both of those movies. So, you know, he said the
Yeah, he
line that
is.
I just gave you. So you voila, it works.
Nothing more iconic than him like poring over a keyboard in Jurassic Park to me than
With
with
that
the cigarette hanging out of his
cigarette.
mouth. I don't
Yeah.
know how it hangs on.
Yeah.
It's like
He's got so
flapping like
many.
this.
Do they speak
Oh.
English on what? It's still I still use that line to this
That's
day.
so good.
Yeah, he is. Gosh, he's got so many great characters. So,
Still rolling
although
around
we're
to these days. And now
oh,
he's
he
found
is.
himself, very like firmly in the middle of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So
Yes, but
just
as we talk
awesome to see that.
movies in '94,
He
he's right in the middle of it.
he's got quite a few.
Yeah,
What an awesome category to get to dive
yeah,
into, and so many great ones to explore, and some lesser known names that I know
yeah,
we'll get into. But let's set it up by talking about the the category, the
yeah.
industry, like the movie industry, and what it was in 1994. Throw that Twisted Era spin on it, and you
Yes,
look at it like movies today. Very, very different experience.
absolutely. What do we say? Kids, Uncle Doug's going to tell you a story. When when today, it's like, boy, you know what? I would really like to watch Pulp Fiction. It takes about 20 seconds to find Pulp Fiction on whatever
Yeah, I
streaming.
was gonna say, which streaming
Yeah,
service is it on today?
yeah. It's probably on all of them because he loves to have his movies out there. But hey, I want to watch Pulp Fiction. So click, click, click. 20 seconds in, I'm at the diner, and we're talking about robbing this diner. And in 1994, that is not the way it happened.
No, not one
Uh,
bit.
Completely different. And the reason I picked that movie out, Pulp Fiction comes out. It's at Cannes in May, but it comes out in America around October. That we all went. You had to go, obviously, So on that Sunday, it came out on Friday night. Sunday evening, we went and saw it, and I believe it was Monday or Tuesday. I went back and saw it again. Because it was like it's so different than anything you ever seen, and so in '94, if you wanted to repeat watch, well, that's what you had to do. Now I can sit here, I can pull it up. Heck, I can go to YouTube and watch the scene that I want. You know, I just literally want to hear the Royale and cheese part. I can go to YouTube and just see that. You can get snippets, these iconic snippets of movies. It's so different today. We are so spoiled to
Do
be
you
able to access anything we want at any time.
do you remember what the cost of a movie ticket would have been in 1994?
I'm going to go around $6, but you also had dollar theaters back then. So
Yeah.
after a few weeks, the dollar theater, and so we did pay the full price. Actually, my apartment there in Wilmington backed up to a movie theater, so you could walk. You had a it had a fence, but then somebody cut a hole in it, so you just walked through the hole in the fence, and voila, you were there at the theater. So you would pay full price to see it, but then you would drive down there to the old
So
dollar theater.
according to my quick fingers on Google, 408 was supposedly the average price of a ticket in 1994.
Yeah,
Today you're looking like 1175. So there's also that.
yeah. Well, and it's 11.75 plus $5 service charge to use their system. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous. It's that's a when you look at one thing, and I'll say it, I'll point it. The movies today just aren't as good, and I'm not saying that they're not good movies. There's just not as many. When we go through this list,
Oh,
there's 100 good movies in '94. Now you may have 10, and so why would you even, and in 3 months you're going to be able to access it via Amazon Prime or Netflix or Peacock or Paramount or whatever. It's like I've got a 75-inch TV. It's not the same,
right.
but it's pretty close to a good experience to
You
not have
get
to
it
pay. And
right. You get it from the comfort of your home, right on your
yeah,
couch. You're not having to worry about not just the 1175 for the ticket, but the $10 for the small soda, and the
everything.
other $10 for the medium popcorn, the service charge for putting butter on top, and
Yeah,
whatever
but
candy you want too.
and even as I say that, was it 2 summers ago when Top Gun came out? We all still went to the movie theater to see it because going to a movie is still a cool experience. And don't
For
get me
sure.
wrong, I've been looking forward. We've done so much sports, video games. I love all that, but I am a movie junkie at heart.
Yes,
That is
you are.
mine. And so when we finally got, it's like, hey man, we got to get movies on here. I was like giddy, because this is what I love. And so it's tough now to today to see what's going on. I will say this: when a movie is good today, it's really good because it stands out.
Yeah.
But back
There,
then,
there's the
geez,
consuming side of it, like, right?
mm-hmm,
So it's different how we consume it. Obviously, different how they make them too, right? Like you think back to, it's funny to me, and it kind of shows the evolution of the movie industry too.
mm-hmm,
Star Wars. I know this is way before '94, but
sure,
like you look back at the original trilogy and kind of how they made those movies and the production that went into it. I know they were probably massively over budgeted movies back then. But like compared to what it is today, and you think about the trilogy that just recently wrapped up, and
yeah,
the amount of money that probably was poured into those. But like even too the fact that they like remastered. So like if you go back and watch the original Star Wars trilogy today,
mm-hmm,
where on what's it, Disney Plus has it today.
yes,
You can look at like if you have the original cassettes, whatever you might have it on the VHS tapes to go watch it. It's not the same on Disney
mm,
Plus as it is on those because I mean they've done things with CGI to like replace some of the characters.
sure,
Uh, you know, Jabba I don't think is even like they may have touched him up even a little
mm-hmm.
bit here and there. So just the technology and kind of what it's done to movie production, it, even
The
back in
ability
'94.
for you to be able to do that today. We couldn't
Mm-hmm.
have done that in '94.
No,
You
no.
couldn't sit there and
I
go,
I saw there. It was just yesterday. I don't know who posted it, but like you talk about AI and kind of the things that that's done to
mm-hmm,
um all kinds of industries. Someone you got things like Chat GPT you could put prompts into. Someone asked a video generation tool to create a 1950s-esque trailer of Super
ah,
Mario Bros. Of the Mario Brothers movie, the one that just came out
yes,
with
yes,
Jack Black and all. And it had like a complete 50s vibe to it. Like from not and it wasn't like taking the original like the 2023 movie and reskinning it and putting like filters on. This was like characters created. Bowser looked completely different. I mean, it was like a live action Mario Brothers movie set in the 1950s. So it was
Wow.
wild to see. So like that's where we are today with, the ability to create that sort of stuff with just a few prompts and commands, which could also get us into a whole nother discussion about
Oh,
the
it's
recent
huge.
strikes and everything that the
You
movie, TV, all sort of, Hollywood,
and,
what that went through the last year or so.
and you can go down the path of the hate to say it, the TikTok video being 30 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people watching 30-second videos constantly now. So when you tell them, oh, the movie's 2 hours and 6 minutes, they're like, what? How can I sit through 2 hours and 6 minutes? If you chop it up into 30-second snippets so that I can use my thumb to go up and down on, I'll watch your 2 hour movie, right? That's
Yeah,
what we've
it's terrible,
become,
isn't it?
man. It's
What
so bad.
what was Dune? Like
Mm-hmm.
that was like a 3 hour movie or something, wasn't
Cut it in
It's like,
half too.
yeah,
It's
no,
like they were like, oh yeah, nobody's ever gonna watch
two
this. We got to
parts,
put this in 2 parts.
3 years apart. So it's just it's wild,
Yeah,
but
I believe because they had to raise the money for the second one. So they made the first one to see if it would make any money. If
mhm.
it would not have, you would have just had a random Dune part one and no part two. That's
Unbelievable.
the world we live in. And I think that's
Oh.
another thing, when we look back on, 94, there was just a lot more movies made. Now, granted, we didn't have the entertainment. Obviously, cable was big. 94 is, we've got cable. We've got our channels. You know, we got 50. I think it was Bruce who said we got 57 channels and nothing on. That's we had channels and they had to fill channels. But it is definitely different today. You get hey, there is a movie coming out this Friday, or back then it was like five. And we're going to go through. There is a point in time in 1994 where these three iconic movies were actually in the theater at the same time.
That's
you
insane.
know and so it's it's a spoiler alert. It's Forrest Gump, Pulp Fiction, and The Lion King
That's
in
wild.
October of 1994. If you went to your local theater and you walked up, you could pick one of those three movies because they were playing in their first runs. That is unreal to even
That's
think about.
I know we don't have the data on this. I'd be
Mm-hmm.
interested too and see. You mentioned the run, right? Like how long
Mm-hmm.
movies stay in theaters
Sure, they would have
today
stayed in
versus
longer as
94.
well.
Like
Absolutely.
there wasn't a streaming service to get to immediately because everything, the thing that matters today, it feels like, is streams and how
Sure.
many people are watching it, how many eyeballs, how many rewatches,
Right.
um, all that sort of stuff. Whereas back then, like, highest grossing, it was ticket sales. Like
It
that's what
was
they had.
ticket sales.
That's what and then you wait as
6
long as
months down the
possible.
road,
It
yeah,
would
you
come
would
out
get
on DVD,
on
VH, well,
on
VHS, right?
VHS. Yeah.
So like it just the physical media sales are completely gone
Yeah.
today. I
Oh,
say completely, they're still happening, but like not
nothing,
nearly as much
nothing.
as they were back then.
No. And it's funny. It almost completely went away. And then you found that they moved the office somewhere, and you're like, well, if I had the physical media, I wouldn't have to deal with these streaming companies.
Yeah.
So I went back and I still have physical media that I don't necessarily use, but it's built for that day when, what, we're not going to show this anymore. I'm like, well, I still have it
Right.
in a hard copy, because I
Where's
was the same
the
way. It was like, who needs physical media anymore? I'll get rid of all of it. And then the next thing you know, something that
oh
you
wait a
love
minute.
that you had is gone, and you can't get it anywhere. And like, well,
Wasn't that the
wait
whole point of the Disney Vault? Do you remember that?
yes.
Like, we're gonna lock this away and keep it away for 10 years and not sell it. And then, I mean, obvious money grab, right? Re-release it in 10 years in the new platinum version.
That's
Like,
right.
so,
That's right.
So,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah, it's got 1 second more of footage. It's
yeah, the
actually,
director's cut.
yeah, the director's cut here.
Oh no, that's
But
incredible.
yeah,
I think we'd be remiss too if we didn't mention recency, like the impact that COVID had on movies. Like
sure.
I mean,
Oh,
we
it's
saw
brutal.
how many movie theaters close.
Yep.
The right ones scaled back
Hmm.
and took the time to invest. There's a couple around me. I don't know in your area, but some that took the time to, that I believe you remember all the funding that became available for certain
Yeah.
industries. Movie theaters were, they shut down. able to take some of that funding and reinvest in themselves and
Right.
upgrade seating, upgrade screens, upgrade concession stand air, like everything about them, and make them more of a I have more theaters around me now that have like arcades and other things inside of them to like
Right.
and like coffee bars and this and that. They're like almost mini malls in the lobby
Yes.
now, as opposed to just like get your ticket, get inside, and go to the movie. Like they want you
Right.
to hang out and like experience it there, so like have an experience there.
And I will say this as a little bit older person, the seating now is
Oh
conducive for sleeping as
yeah.
opposed to watching a movie.
The
You
only thing they're
know,
missing is like the massage button
they
to go
really
on, like
are.
the
And
recliner to go
there's
back and just get food
I
delivered to you. It's
can't
just oh.
can't use the recliner because once the recline is in, now you're at home and you are out. And
Oh.
recently, I one of the last movies we actually went to, I took my wife because she wanted to see. It's like, oh, this is she, and poof, it's not long, and so I had to do the put the chair back up. I was like, I am going to be
This is
out.
done.
Yes.
Oh.
And so it's like I love the comfy chair, but I hate the comfy chair. So when we did Top Gun, you see everybody getting in there and they get I'm like, nope, I am sitting straight up.
Put me in a cockpit, if you would.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll put my seatbelt on here and we're ready to roll.
That's awesome.
But that's another thing. And around 94, 95 is when theaters started pushing a better experience,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
It wasn't just a big screen now. Uh
the
DVD
audio. Yeah,
digital audio was the thing, and the previews, you'd have that cool DVD sound trailer that was just, it was not the THX sound yet where it blew
right.
but the first, it would spin and it would do surround around you, and it was like, man, this is cool. So that was what they were doing back then. They had not figured out the service to your seat and the recliners and
No. But
all that good
hey,
stuff.
Regal Cinemas had that hell of an art. The roller coaster ride down the film and around and spinning, having
Mm,
the popcorn that would go up in your face. Right? They've tried to recreate that.
yeah.
We've been to some kids movies here and there recently. Paw
Hmm.
Patrol, I think, might have been the last movie that I saw in theaters. You got to take the kids, right?
Right.
Um, but they try to recreate that sort of live action, the feel of like you're in the movie.
But
The
you
thing before
mentioned
all the previews start.
you mentioned something interesting as well too, and you're taking your children, because it was a big deal when I was a kid, and I think it was a big deal when you were a kid
Hmm.
to actually go to the theater and see something.
Yeah.
And I think you guys want to pass that on to your children to continue that experience. It's just different,
Yeah, for
you
sure.
know. But
For
even when
sure.
they get in there and they see how big it is, and see how loud it is, it's still a cool experience.
Yeah.
I not Please don't take this as I am poo-pooing on the movie experience. I still love movies. I just doing research for this, you just realize what we used to have.
I know. It's not the same.
Spoiler alert, that era was way better. So
Yeah. As you're doing your research,
mhm.
to stick with our segmenting of the one big thing, is
Yeah.
there anything that stands out to you from this era, the 1994 year in the movie
Yeah.
industry?
Well, I tried to look at like different categories, you know, because even there were so many movies that came out back then
Oh,
that not only did you have just one movie coming out a week, you had so many. You had there's like 10 sports movies that come out in 1994. There's like five, we call them slacker films, that come out in 1994. It's not just, oh, that's one good movie. It's a ton of good movies. Let's just look at just sports movies, just sports movies. You had a couple of more of the, we call family movies, the kids movies, with the a couple with baseball. You had Little Big League and the Disney movie Angels in the Outfield, and you also had a Mighty Ducks sequel that year from Disney. That D2. Mighty Ducks was huge to the point that they named their team the Anaheim Mighty Ducks
yeah,
at that time. You have, like, documentaries are starting to become big as well. Documentaries. I will say this: documentaries today are incredible.
yeah.
Now the line blurs now between is it a true documentary or is
Yeah,
it a
right.
film now? Because they've gotten so good at
Yeah.
it. But you had an early documentary in Hoop Dreams that still holds up. That was about the high school basketball scene at that time, which was incredible. Oh, there was another kid movie, and if you haven't shown your kids this one, it's football related. It was Little Giants,
That's
and
phenomenal one.
it's so good, and it's Cowboys and New York
Giants,
Giants,
yeah.
and you even have Rick Moranis, who was in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, which is
Yep.
still a great kids movie. But you have our buddy Al Bundy as the coach of the other.
Yeah.
If you don't know Married with Children, maybe you know Modern Family.
Right.
You know,
Right.
he's Jay. So
Yep.
he was the other guy. So you had that just awesome, Little Giants as well. And then you had some others that didn't hold up as well. You had a couple of terrible sequels. There's a Major League sequel and Major League is one of my favorite movies. Major League 2 is one of my
They
least
ruined it.
favorite movies.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
ruined it.
Yeah. And then there was a surf movie in the 80s called like In the Summer or something. They did a sequel to it. It's pretty terrible as well. But you also had the Cobb movie, which is
Yeah.
not that great. It's very
Tommy Lee.
dark. Yeah. Yeah. Brendan Fraser is a baseball prodigy in The Scout. And you have a basketball movie with Tupac Shakur called Above the Rim. All that is just in one year. All that
Wild, man.
just one
Wild that
year.
like all that would happen.
Yes. And so, for sports movies, that's what you get. It's like today when you see a sports movie, it's like, oh, cool. We're going to get a sports movie this year.
I knew
You got like
Sandlot.
10.
Like I knew I think back to
Mhm.
like baseball movies that had an impact.
Yeah.
Angels in the Outfield's the one that I remember. Like I love Sandlot. Don't get me wrong. It was great
Sure.
kids, like coming of age kids movie. In that that was actually my introduction to James Earl Jones too.
Hmm.
The grumpy neighbor with the big dog, the monster dog.
Yeah.
But Angels in the Outfield's the one that I like that I remember. Just being a really good like stick with you kind of baseball movie.
Sure.
I mean, for I guess more not geared towards kids, but like the it's not a major league, right? Like I'm not
No.
six remembering
No.
Major League Two or anything like
No.
that. But even Little Big League, it's just for whatever reason, it was awesome. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know if it just had a better story to it or
Yeah. Well, what was funny was I actually watched something recently about a guy who went and did every baseball movie and he graded it for the actual baseball. And
yeah,
Little Big League for a kids, family movie actually got real players to do all these roles. So the baseball is about as good as it gets in Little
yeah,
Big League
that's
because
funny.
it's
It's
real
hilarious.
players.
Yeah.
uh,
Not
but
just
yeah,
it's not JGL, right? Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Wild.
that's right. The top 5 grossing movies from that year.
Well,
Have you heard of any of
yeah,
these?
yeah, right. That's where. Well, I'll let you run through them and then I'll follow
Yeah.
on.
Well, at number 5 is the Keanu Reeves masterpiece Speed,
Yeah,
which if you've never seen it, it holds up. Sandra
it,
Bullock, Dennis Hopper.
there's
Um,
several speeds, aren't there? They did a speed too.
he didn't.
He
They
didn't,
did.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
Keanu's only in the first one, and that's the
yep.
only one worth watching. Uh, and number 4, you had The Mask, which 94 was a huge year for Jim Carrey. And it's hard to even think that you didn't know who Jim Carrey was. But before this year, Jim Carrey had appeared in a few movies in the 80s. He had a vampire movie called Once Bitten in the 80s that he was actually the lead that didn't do very well. And then he gets the Living Color job. And he starts getting a few characters on Living Color and he ends up getting this movie, The Mask, which if I remember correctly, they shot it and it took almost a year because of all the crazy effects. Because
Yeah,
he
yeah.
puts this mask on and he becomes this character. And in the meantime, while he's waiting for the mask to come out, he gets offered Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. If you've never seen Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, it's another one. Go watch. It took them like a month to make. You can tell it.
And that doesn't
But
even make the top 10 list.
oh,
Of
it's no. And when we talk about media, it's
yeah,
one that does better on videotape. So they make more money after the fact through rentals than they did in the release. But that is an incredible year for Jim Carrey. And this iconic guy now, but back then, who Jim Carrey was.
and did you
You know,
mention Dumb and Dumber?
Yeah, that's on. That was number 7. He had
Right.
that year
Like
too.
what?
Yeah,
It's just
in one
insane.
year, he's doing it. He's doing the Living Color, and he's got Ace Ventura, and he's got The Mask, and he's got Dumb and Dumber.
That's
It's
incredible. He
it
might have peaked
is.
in 1994.
He absolutely did
Yeah.
peak in 1994.
Oh,
At number 3 with $378 million. I'm sorry, Speed had 350, Mask had 351. True Lies shows up at number 3, 378. And bold statement here, but I think that's Arnold's best movie. That's Arnold Schwarzenegger. It is tremendous. It's going to be, not, you know, I think it's more modern. If you watch it, the villain would be more a more modern villain. Previous before, we were always fighting just, Nazis and stuff. And True Lies gets into more modern warfare. And but Jamie Lee Curtis, you've got Tom Arnold as his
yeah.
his sidekick. There's this awesome backstory with make sure I get it right. I think it's Bill Pullman, who is this sleazy car salesman. Who it's incredible. If you've never seen True Lies, go watch True Lies. It is awesome.
True Lies, kindergarten cop. No, I don't. Not.
Not
Not.
yeah. No, no. I'm going to say the only one that I would consider close to True Lies with me is Terminator 2 is an iconic movie, which was a couple years earlier, and I think Total Recall is one of
That's
one of
yeah, for
one of
sure.
Arnold's best as well too. But
For sure.
at number 2, you get Forrest Gump, 677 million. I don't think Forrest Gump has aged as well as maybe some of these others, because it's like, and it was too big.
Got
You
some
know what I
lines that
mean?
hold up, but like that's the
It's
story
you're not
itself and
sitting
just
down and watching Forrest Gump anymore like
no.
you used to. But absolutely, the lines are great. You'll
I don't
still
think I can
use
open a box of chocolates without
no, no,
You can't.
and so I
Or if
don't
I
know.
meet anyone named Jenny, I can't say their name
Oh
right. So
yeah, and didn't they make a restaurant out of this that's still
Bubba
around?
Gump,
Can't you
right?
can get the
Yeah,
Bubba Gump shrimp
yeah,
still? you
absolutely.
know. But yeah, Tom Hanks actually, I think this wins Best Picture, and I think he wins Best Actor that year for Forrest Gump. So it was huge at the time, but it's one of those now you look back fondly. Haley Joel Osment, I think that's his first movie. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, I don't think it holds up as well as some of these others. And then number one that year was The Lion King, $763 million.
yeah.
um, Iconic movie. They think they
Disney,
made
man,
made
it's just
multiple
crazy.
sequels. That was, and then they did a live action recently, or
They did, yeah.
I
Like
guess as best live action as
right,
you can do with lions, right?
right.
Yeah,
The whole Jungle Kingdom over there.
yeah.
But that fact that Lion King sits at the top of the
Hmm.
highest grossing, that's the big thing to me from this year is
Yeah.
that not only is it an animated film that takes number one, it's the dollar amount tied to it too. The 763 million. Massive amount. Massive amount. You think about some of like it's just for that to be highest grossing then, see, like it's not too terribly far off from like opening weekends nowadays. It's like you see the $1 billion
Hmm.
movies of today and kind of what they I know a lot of that kind of goes back to the earlier discussion around
Of ticket
cost of
costs and
stuff and
yeah,
whatnot, but like that's what it grossed worldwide, and like
yeah.
we're talking about what they do today, and it's
Well,
crazy to see.
let's do the real feel though. Annual inflation of about 2.5%. That equates to
Yeah,
$1.6 billion.
so yeah,
So
not far off.
not far off. There's only been a couple of movies that made it to the 2 billion. 2 billion. I think there's three maybe that got there, but so that's a lot of money. It did very well for its time. I
Certainly
think
did.
I think what's funny about those, and those are all five, big time movies. There are these iconic movies from that year that aren't even anywhere near that. And
Right.
the
Right.
one that jumps out the most, that you I don't say people forget that it was actually at the theater because nobody went, was is Shawshank Redemption. Shawshank Redemption comes out in '94 to little fanfare, doesn't do very well, weird, marketing just didn't click. And it's not until that thing is shown every week on cable that it becomes this iconic movie. And now people talk about it reverently, like it is, oh,
Right.
then this is amazing. It's like,
The greatest of all time.
yeah, it is amazing. But for some reason, nobody went and saw this. Yeah.
But do you think that speaks like that speaks to the because I actually while you were talking about the number of movies
Mm-hmm.
released that year, take a stab. This is IMDb, some
Oh,
advanced title research. The movies released between January 1 and December 31, 1994. The number of movies.
let's see here. Is there 200?
You are way low.
Really?
Yeah.
How
It is
many is it?
over 4,000 movies that were released in 1994. And I mean, it could be like straight to TV movies, like
It's got to be.
but there are 4,000 movies released in 1994. Um,
Wow.
what? Number one, that's wild to me. Number two is like what the fact that we talked about it. The number of movies released today is far fewer. Like,
Mm-hmm.
do you think they learned something about
It,
just
it's become
oversaturation of the movie market?
it's become more expensive. And so if you're going to invest, $150 million into a movie, you're only going to invest it into one. I want to invest my 150 million and I want 500 million back on return. To where back then they would have taken that 150 and split it 10 times and made 10 smaller movies that you could get. They weren't going to make a ton of money on, but they would have broke even. Well, now they're all swinging for the home run, right? They want the Marvel. Ooh,
Yeah,
we invested 200 million and we got a billion back, and then we got another 500 million in stuff, you
yeah.
know, in toys and in all this stuff, and that's what they're looking for. And nobody, I mean, they're trust me, there's film festivals here in Winston. They're still making movies, but back then they weren't afraid to make a normal $20 million movie. And now you either get really low budget or you get really high budget. So,
You know what I should do while we're sitting here is actually
mhm.
filter this down to like US movies because I
Yeah,
think it's just
yeah. As
I went
opposed
to
to
I went to
the,
like not fact check myself, but like compare it to today on IMDb, and there was like 19,000 movies released in
mhm.
2023 during the same date range. But
Yeah,
that
it's
to
like
me speaks to like
the world.
the word, yeah,
Yeah.
the mass media world that we live in, and like how easy it is. We're technically releasing movie feature length films every
Hmm.
with the podcast here. It's like if you
Sure.
go back,
That's
we've
fair.
got some hour 45 minute movies of episodes in season one that we dove into, but
Absolutely.
you're
That's
not
that's
to the point though, like you're not seeing the studio level produced type
right.
movies released at such a frequent pace as they
No,
were,
not at
back
all.
then. I think last year the two that stand out, and there were plenty. Don't get me wrong, but like Oppenheimer and Barbie are the ones that come to
Sure.
mind from 23 because that's where it felt like the movie industry put all the eggs into that basket, those
Yep.
baskets rather.
They absolutely went all in on both of them, and they both made a lot of money. And they 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 did what they wanted to do. Now, to be fair, Christopher Nolan, who made Oppenheimer, would have fit perfectly in this. He can, as we say, spin a good yarn. He does not make by the numbers movies. He makes movies that you can't. He does not
You
make the
need to see.
TikTok movie, as we say.
Right.
You have to focus on this thing, and you have to, and that's awesome. And I think that's why he stands out today, is because he is being different. It's not just straightforward. Um, but yeah, that's wild.
Insane.
Hey, I want to throw one other thing in another category, and part of this goes back to the sports. Sports had it was a huge year in sports that we talked about, but it had a lot of scandals. And I don't remember many scandals from this year. I was 21 that year, living through it, but the one that jumps out, and this may have actually happened in '93, but the movie came out in '94 was while I went to school in Wilmington. Carol Co. had built a studio down there, and so they would shoot movies. They still have a huge movie presence in Wilmington, still shooting stuff down there, but they were shooting The Crow
Oh,
in
yeah.
Wilmington. And Brandon Lee was Bruce Lee's son,
Oh,
and
yeah. That's
he had done one movie, I think it was called Rapid Fire, and this was going to be the follow up. And The Crow had been a comic book, noir comic book. It was dark, and essentially this guy died and had come back with the crow, and he was going to get vengeance and all this. And it's a legit movie. It's good, but it's got this horrible backstory to where
yeah.
during one of the scenes, uh, Brandon Lee is actually killed
Yeah.
by a prop gun that had fired some sort of
Real fragmented bullet, something like that. It's
yes.
a story that probably sounds really familiar if you've been following anything with the
Exactly.
Rust,
And
you know?
that's what
Yeah.
I was thinking about. It was like, you know, anytime anything crazy, I was like, whoa, this has never happened before. I'm like, well, technically it has.
Yeah.
And they did not focus on the one person that shot because I believe it was a bunch of he had when you see the scene, he jumps on a boardroom table and the table is completely surrounded by people firing at him.
Hmm.
So I don't know if they even knew.
Know who it was.
Right.
Right.
And to be fair, I don't think the full story's ever come out because it was just a
Yeah.
horrible situation.
Mm.
It's the same horrible situation they're going through without
Yeah.
and so um but that happens there in Wilmington, and it was
That's
huge
crazy.
news that what do you mean you're shooting a movie?
And
This is
someone
a movie,
actually got shot.
and someone actually gets shot and dies,
Yeah.
and it's Brandon Lee, the son of Bruce Lee. And so they had enough to finish the movie. They shot a few scenes without him where there if you go back and watch, there'll be scenes where he just walks and you don't see his face. That's not him. And
Yeah.
there's a few scenes where they'll flash his face and like lightning and thunder, and they put his face on somebody else. But it's unreal.
Yeah.
But I will say this: the movie's not. I think it stinks because what could have been. He could
Right.
have been a pretty good action star, and because that movie is good. It's for you Ghostbusters fans. Ernie Hudson is in it as well. It's the only other thing I've ever seen Ernie Hudson in. I believe I don't remember him doing much besides the Ghostbusters movies, but he's great. I take that back. He's in another movie from this era. But The Crow is the only one I could think of that had like real controversy, and that was terrible. It was a awful scandal.
Yeah. It's wild. Um, I probably the most famous death then from 19.
It's
So he died in 94.
He did well, yeah. He died. He probably died in '93. Like I say,
93. Movie
this
comes out in
probably
94.
happened. The movie comes out in '94, and that's when it really, because they did finish the movie, and everybody was like, "Should we finish the movie? Is
Right. It's
this?"
one of those things.
Yes, if you as a producer had raised $30 million, it's tough. That's a tough call, and I guarantee there's insurance companies, but it's like, well, what do you mean he got shot?
Right.
It's just like I say, it was a horrible
Yep.
situation.
Yeah.
So no, if we want to, we can get into births and deaths, but there was somebody more famous than him who died
Yeah.
in 1994. Yeah, the most famous personality in '94 who died was John Candy.
Crazy.
And John Candy was only 43 years old, and I believe it was health conditions. He was a large man, and he had gotten really big by '94, and he passes away. And you want to look at a run of movies. He just, and when you saw him, you felt good. He was just a fun loving guy. Even he would even from time to time show up and say like darker non-funny roles. He's still good in them. If any of you have ever seen JFK, he's a sleazy lawyer for about five minutes in JFK, where he shows up there, with this great Louisiana accent.
That's
But
awesome.
But yeah, even
He,
Home Alone,
I was gonna
iconic
say
movie.
the
He just
movie
shows
I
up.
know him from is Home Alone. Like that's I think
Yeah.
my introduction to him as a kid, right?
Yes. Yes.
Is seeing him in there.
When he says seriously, you mean you've never heard polka, polka,
Yeah.
polka, and she's like, no, I've
No.
never heard any of your polka songs, man.
Oh my goodness.
But for me, he was on the Canadian version of Saturday Night Live. He was on SCTV, Second City TV, and so he did these skits back in the day with Eugene Levy from American Pie and Schitt's Creek and stuff like that. Rick Moranis and Dave Thomas, who did Strange Brew with Doug and Bob McKenzie, all these awesome
Yeah.
characters. But yeah, Candy was on there, and then he shows up in Vacation as the
Hmm.
as the security guard.
Yep.
And then we get him in Uncle Buck, and this Armed and Dangerous, and
Cool Runnings too. Like that's another. He's in Cool Runnings
it's an
'93. Like just
iconic
yeah,
movie. Yes, that's another one that still holds up.
yeah.
Yeah, such a good flick. But yeah, lost John Candy in '94. What about on a more positive note? Was anybody born that year?
A couple, yeah. There's not a lot of huge names, and as we were diving through, we'll be able to share more of these, I think, on the TV side of
Mm-hmm.
the industry. But Dakota Fanning's probably the biggest name, born in 1994. Obviously has some iconic roles in a number of movies, and has done well for herself. Kind of one of the few, I think, that has been able to evolve out of like the childhood actor
Mm-hmm.
and like get herself into some bigger roles and more serious roles.
Yeah. So
That
we'll talk here about Quentin here in a second, but she was in the most recent Quentin movie, the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. She
Yeah.
she shows up, right?
So she's in 1994, February 23rd, a day before me. So her
Look at you
and
go.
her 6 years and well, I guess 5 years and 364 days apart.
That's right.
So that's funny to think about, but others, there's Saoirse Ronan, a name I'm not gonna lie, I had to look up how to pronounce, but
That's
a
great.
very recognizable face. The cover of Lady Bird is the
Oh
profile picture
yeah.
of red haired girl, Lady
Yeah.
Bird, right? So
Yes.
that's her. She's in that. She's also Little Woman. She's in that as well, and The Lovely
Okay.
Bones back in 2009. So another
Okay.
1994 birth. And then
Yeah.
a name, another one, Ansel on Elgort, a name not so big, but if you're a fan of the Divergent books, which
Okay.
were like they were released around the same time book series wise as like the Hunger Games. It was like another version, maybe a slightly, those teenage sort of like dystopian
Yeah.
society type books, and Hunger Games and Divergent were very similar in nature. And
Okay.
then, so Hunger Games comes out as a movie series, and then not too long after they started releasing the Divergent movies, which those were all right. I'd say Shailene Woodley's in those, and like that's where
Okay.
she gets big. Miles Teller, that's like his first big
Ah.
movie series. So he's in that, and Ansel is Shailene's brother in that movie series. I don't think the last one even makes it to the theaters. Like they were
Oh
gonna do the
wow.
whole like split part three
Yeah.
into two movies, and they got part one out, and then like I don't even know what happened to the last one. So it sort of fell off the cliff. Whereas Hunger Games,
Oh.
had a long runway and
Oh.
then took off.
Sure.
Divergent kind of like fell off the end of the runway,
No.
so it never ended up making it up into the air. But Ansel is he's a
Okay.
1994
Very
baby.
cool.
So there's some okay ones in there. Like I said, others that we'll get into, I think, more on the TV side of things. But
Yeah.
some interesting, births throughout the year of 1994 as well.
Very cool. Well, we've got a couple more categories I want to hit, and I we'll each have our one big thing when we get to the end. But I wanted to bring forth, as we jokingly opened up with, um, Rob and I are 15 years apart, so it's going to be a very different experience. But we wanted to talk the most iconic movie from '94 is Pulp Fiction. It literally puts Quentin on the map. And to be fair, when you go back and watch it now, I like the lines more than the movie. I don't think the
Yeah.
movie holds up that great, and I know I'm going to get killed for saying that. I think there are better movies that come along. I think Tarantino makes better movies after that. I'm not saying it's bad, but I like the quotes more than the actual movie now. And when it came out, like I say, I saw it 4 times in the theater because we just kept going back because once again, you couldn't stream it. And I remember it being one of those movies that they put the script out like at bookstores
Wow.
so you could literally follow along because the dialogue was so good, and I at the time, like I say, I was at UNCW. My degree was in English, and for some of the electives, we had a screenwriter from the '60s who had retired to Wilmington and taught screenwriting classes there at
Man.
UNCW. So I took it as an elective, and we used that book to talk about how to craft dialogue in a scene and stuff like that. And I think that is why that is the most important movie from the year because so many people were
Analyzing
attracted.
the yeah,
Yes,
like
how do
just
we
deep diving into it, which is
yes,
not that's not
and
something you typically see.
to be fair, it's the Seinfeld. We'll get into TVs, but it's the Seinfeld. Let's talk about random things that happen.
Yeah.
Who would think that you would care that they don't call quarter pounders with cheese quarter pounders in Europe because they have the metric system because we're very American centric and would not think that they don't know what a quarter pounder is.
Yeah.
Well, what do they call it? They call it Royale with cheese. It is so iconic,
Yeah.
but it means nothing to the story of this movie. Absolutely, it moves it nada. It is literally just cool dialogue,
Yeah.
and I think that's what's so amazing. But what I wanted, like I say, my experience was different because this is my wheelhouse. I am 21 years old. This is boom, perfect time for this movie. And I used to laugh because people who are older than I was, like the 30s and 40-year-old people, didn't get that movie. It was just like, we don't get it. This is stupid. It's not in order and it goes back and forth and all these things. I am more curious about you being
Yeah.
younger. Obviously, at 6, your parents they weren't taking you to
Right.
Jurassic Park and then we're going to go watch Pulp Fiction.
Right.
So I was curious if maybe is it something you found in high school or college or something like that, or how are you experienced to Pulp Fiction?
It's a good one. So that's I know about it. It's more of like I think it's passed down, right? Probably from like your generation to ours, like because you're to your point, right? It's it's not something that was easily latched onto by older generations. So it made a lot more sense to you and then generations to follow. So it was a college movie.
Mm-hmm.
People talk about it. It was like one of those. Um, I don't want to say weekend, maybe like weeknight, right? Like let's huddle around the TV in the lounge of our wing here in the dorm room and kick back and watch and do what college kids do. So it was more of a college experience as opposed to like discovering it at some point on my own. So it was like a shared
Mm-hmm.
experience
Gotcha.
amongst friends and kind of watching it together and enjoying it that way.
So it's funny you say that because my experience is it's very similar because I was in college when it
Yeah.
happened, and we had a dorm. I had a dorm mate live right next door to me, who was a year younger than I was, and I went in his dorm room, and he Chapel Hill, and he liked the local music scene. So the first thing he had was a local band on his wall called the Sex Police. I've like obviously never heard of this band,
Yeah.
because it was local, but I'm like, okay, this is a little odd. I got the Beatles on my wall and he's got, Sex
Yeah.
Police on his. But he also had a poster of it was a movie poster, and I honestly thought it was fake because, I was like, I'd never heard of this movie.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about it. And it was Reservoir Dogs.
Huh. Yeah.
And he had the original Reservoir Dogs poster on there. I'm like, man, what is this? And he like
Like what?
pew, he killed over on his bed as if I had shocked
You
him to
don't
death.
know?
He's like, you don't know this? I'm like, dude, I've
Wow.
never heard of this. And he goes, I'll tell you what, we're gonna get together in the dorm room
Yeah.
and we'll get some people. Nobody in our dorm had even heard of this. And we all sat in the room and
Yeah.
watched Reservoir Dogs.
That's awesome.
And Reservoir Dogs comes out a year before, but we're sitting there and I remember the light, coming back on, like, what did I just watch? It's like, this is crazy. And he goes, well, you know, next Friday, the sequel,
It's
the
yeah,
follow up
yeah.
to this comes out. It's
How
Pulp
perfect.
Fiction. And it was like,
Yeah.
well, I've got to see that
Yeah.
now. And so that's how
That's
I am.
awesome.
Same deal.
Yeah.
Never, I didn't know any
I
of these
I feel like it's one of
things.
the, I'd heard about it and,
Mm-hmm.
in high school, whatnot. And then you get to college and people are like quoting it that had seen it. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
one of those things. I wasn't on like the to-do list,
Mm-hmm.
is something I needed to see, but like I come upon it and get to experience it alongside, everyone else that either had seen it and was quoting it and was like, well, you need to catch up. So, like, got to get you up to speed on probably similar, right? Like I was like, well, I just never got around to seeing it.
Yeah, I just know.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
know about it. I
No.
hear the quotes, and then
Oh
they
yeah.
bring you into the fold, and you're like, well, thanks for opening that door. So, it's just
That's awesome.
yeah,
But I was always curious about how that, because we showed it to our nephew who is 18 now. His dad made us. It's like, hey, we're having Pulp Fiction night,
that's
and we
awesome.
sat around and watched it again, and he liked it,
Yeah,
but it's
not
just,
blown away
and
by it.
yeah, and it's not, I don't even say he was blown away. It was like, okay, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah,
And I will say this: when you go back and watch it, I had not watched it in a long time. I can about quote it, but like I say, I just don't think it holds up. I think some of the things he made better. I love the Kill Bill movies, and stuff like that. I think those are amazing. And so it's not that I don't like it. It's just he made such better stuff going on. But when I watched it again, it was like, it took me back. You immediately are back. You're like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And, you know, all the little things he throws in there.
yeah,
It's cool. It's cool. But anyway, I was very, very curious to see what your experience was,
yeah.
because
It sounds like not too different. Well, it
not too different.
raises the question too, just about the way movies are passed down, and maybe this is
Yeah.
like a segue into like talking about the eras, and we know which one's
Yeah.
better, but um, yeah, I did because I'm right there with you. The 94 does not. 2024 can't hold a candle to
No,
1994. Um,
no.
but the way we engage with movies and they are passed down, like I don't know what's the thought on today? Like what can be done to bring it back to 1994?
You got to have more, right?
Yeah,
If you just saw, we had a ton of movies that year. So there's duds. Don't get me wrong. There's some terrible movies from that year. There is a movie with Jack Nicholson as a wolf man. I think it's called Wolf or something like that. Yeah, horrible. I'm not, I know I'm speaking very reverent of 94, but they weren't all hits. There's some junk out there too. But there was enough. They made so many that the junk gets washed away and the cream rises to the top. And so they just need to make more. And and once again, sometimes now they're very specific towards a certain, the superhero movies are a perfect example. They're just there. Kids can see them, adults can see them, that sort of stuff. And it seems now we're very focused on, maybe say, darker stuff. And you wouldn't show your kids this anymore, and so they don't get that experience. And I think there was more that back then that we could all see. And granted, Pulp Fiction, we've just sit there and rambled on about it for 5 minutes. You wouldn't show your kids that,
right,
but
right.
there were so many others that year that you had that experience of. And you may need to have a love of movies as well. And COVID, kind of like you say, it killed the theater experience.
Yeah.
Maverick, I think, brought it back, but there's not been anything since Maverick to go latch a hold. I love the Marvel movies, but they're terrible now. They have fallen off the cliff.
You know what's a good sort of barometer for where we are in movie making and like
Mm-hmm.
the construct, not just like the theater experience, but like the construction
Mm-hmm.
of a movie. Look at how Batman has evolved, right? Like you think back to like the 50s movies and kind of what they were, and like I don't want to call them lighthearted, but they were very much more comic booky. And the action was like the kapow and make the fist the
So,
punch noise, right?
so I'm going to go old man at you. Those are
Yeah.
60s. There are
Okay.
50s
Right.
Batman movies that are even worse.
Worse. So
Like his
yeah.
ears, his ears are this way because he's just got like
So
a ski
right.
mask on. Yeah.
But then like
Yeah.
fast forward to I don't even want to talk about Robert Pattinson and Ben
Yeah.
Affleck. Like I want to go to Christian Bale and what
Sure.
The Dark Knight was and
Yeah.
Heath Ledger and just that trilogy of them because that's where
Just,
like it felt like they were going for what they wanted to be a Batman Best Picture
yeah.
nominee, right?
Yeah.
Um, and they were phenomenal, but like just like the way in which
It gets darker and
yeah, it's
darker
just so different. It's
and
very different, and
darker.
that's kind of like what it feels like the movie industry has done too, like in the way they
Yeah. No, it's fair.
development. Like it's a neat example of just like you follow one franchise and kind of how that's evolved speaks to the broader movie industry.
That is a tremendous point, man. You 50s era Batman
Yeah.
with his ears like this to the point where the villain in Batman is starving a city or something. I
Yeah.
mean, it got to it just went further and like what is going on here? So I
So
think that's a perfect
let's do
example.
a social experiment of like who's got the bomb to the key to the bomb of the other boat on the river
Yes.
and like blow them up and you'll live. So,
Yes.
just you
Yes.
know.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's perfect. But that's man, that's a deeper that's twisted era psychology or something. I don't know.
right?
Like, yeah, that we're not doing that one. That one
No,
doesn't
not
sound very
today.
much fun.
Not today. Well, hey man, it was awesome to dive into movies, right?
Yeah.
Go
So
for it.
one, yeah. What's your one last thing you want to pop in?
Oh, I think it's I'll talk about the kid aspect, right? Like, because we're at
Hmm?
the point now where a 3.5 year old, it's tough to get to sit for a movie. To your
Yeah.
point, right? Like they just don't have the
Yeah.
attention spans of what I was as a 6 year old, or I'm sure as a 4 3 year old too, right? But still wanting to pass that on because I my generation I feel like knows what that movie experience was like. I
Hmm.
had I'm gonna get slammed because I'm a fan of them, and I know that there are many out there who aren't. Michael Bay, for
Hmm.
as little plot as there was, Transformers was
Yeah.
such an action-packed movie theater, like perfect movie theater experience because you got the
Absolutely.
explosions and the
Oh yeah.
everything going on the screen. It was engaging and entertaining and called on my own nostalgia of like growing up watching Transformers, the cartoon. So
Yeah.
like one knowing what that experience can be like and
Hmm.
how it's improved technology wise, with screens and audio and everything, like the immersive experience of IMAX theaters and all that. I want to pass that on. So I
Yeah.
guess my one big thing is like I don't think it's lost yet. Like I don't think we're at a point where movie theaters are going to cease to exist the
No.
way maybe malls are, right?
Yeah.
I think there's still room for them to evolve and bring us back and
Hmm.
have it be meaningful. Maybe it's less about specifically what's on the screen and more about how they're creating that environment for people
Yes.
to come back. But the movie at the end of the day is important, enticing people to want to come to a movie
Yeah.
theater. But like it's like the message to the future
That's
generations is,
awesome.
I don't think it's a dying industry by any means, and I look forward to continuing to share it with my kids and moving forward.
I love it. I walked out of that Transformers movie and I looked at my wife and I said, I could kill this thing 100 different ways. I was like, but I don't want to because I just had fun.
Right. That's
You
see,
know?
that's the thing. And I get, poo-pooed on all the time because I enjoy the
Yeah.
movie. And
Yeah.
I would be the worst movie critic because I can't find anything wrong with movies because I understand that it's like an entertainment form, right?
It,
I'm there to have a good time.
exactly.
I don't care if it was a terrible story. Was I ended like did I enjoy it? Could I, sit there and have a good time? Like it didn't put me to sleep. Like
Right.
I chose to go there. I chose to be entertained. I didn't, I know that Transformers isn't going to win a Best Picture, but
No.
I'm not looking for it to. Like
No.
my expectations are not that high for that kind of a movie.
One of my favorite lines ever in a movie is it's in the movie. It's Steve Martin wrote a movie called Bowfinger about this guy trying to make movies. It's great, but he's got Eddie Murphy in it, and Eddie Murphy is essentially playing himself. He's playing a big movie star, and they're going over the script and it's confusing, and he just drops the line, and it's just so perfect. It's kind of what you're saying. He's like, we're making a movie, not a film, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I want to see films from time to time, but you know what? I like movies too.
Yeah.
I don't want to
Yeah.
think about anything.
Right.
You want to see
Just want
things
to
blowed
escape.
up, and you want to see people, exactly. You just want to escape and you want to have fun. And I've always used that line because I think it's perfect. We're not making a film, we're making a
Yeah.
movie, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
And so that's it. They're just, fun. And
Exactly.
that's that thing about that Transformers. But yeah, that's an awesome one. What I'm
Yeah.
gonna my one thing to leave with is actually a list of movies from that year that you probably never seen. And as we were talking about, there's a bunch of great movies from that year. We love Pulp Fiction and Lion King and Shawshank and all those great sports movies. But these are a few that I think still age well, but are not necessarily,
Talked about
ones
enough.
that yeah.
Yeah.
The first one I'll mention it was a pretty big movie. I think it may have even been nominated for Best Picture, but it was Quiz Show. And Quiz Show was about these 50s era uh, game shows, and they were rigged, and they were asking questions, and they would feed the right answers to the people they wanted to be on the show. And
Nice.
and I'm not saying
Oh,
Jeopardy does this,
Price
but
is Right wasn't on there, was it? No,
no,
good. Thank God.
no. Price is Right. But if you think about, like, when Jeopardy changed the fact that you could keep somebody on there more than 5 games, those people then become celebrities, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Ken
that's kind
Jennings.
of, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what this was about. It's like, well, our ratings are better when this
This
person is
person's
on
on.
here as opposed to this. So they would feed questions to get the right person in there.
That's
It's an
crazy.
incredible movie, but it holds up well. The second one I'll say it's a little darker. After making all the Batman movies, and I think Edward Scissorhands, Tim Burton wanted to do a project that was completely not going to make any money or do anything, and he makes Ed Wood, which is about this low budget director from the 50s and 60s, and it stars Martin Landau as Bela Lugosi. And you may not know that name, but you've seen his face because he played Dracula in all the 30s era Universal Dracula movies. And it has, you name it, everybody from, Bill Murray. And it's a great movie. You're gonna have trouble finding it. It's in black and white, but it is well worth the watch. So
That's
I got
a funny name to bring up too, because he's also 1 year removed, Tim Burton, from Nightmare Before Christmas, which
there you go.
that's one that I still like. My oldest son dressed up as Jack Skellington for 2 or 3 years of Halloween. So you talk about something holding up. Nightmare Before Christmas is like, he's also super obsessed with Halloween. So that
Nice.
that movie was an easy one to introduce him to. And
Yes.
we also just recently did Beetlejuice,
There you
which
go.
I think they're coming. Winona Ryder and
Yeah.
what's her name? They're doing Wednesday.
Oh, from Wednesday. Yeah.
Yeah, they're doing Jenna Ortega. They're doing, Beetlejuice 2.
Yep.
So, coming, just need to see that stuff come back.
So the third one is Immortal Beloved,
Yeah.
which is about a Beethoven, and it's Gary Oldman, who can do
Wow. Yeah.
anything,
Yeah.
but he plays Beethoven after Beethoven's death, and Beethoven had left a will that he gave everything to his immortal beloved, and they didn't know who that was. So essentially, this lawyer has to find it, and so the movie is him interviewing all the people throughout his life to try to figure out who his immortal beloved was. Great
That's
movie.
awesome.
Another one that it just holds up well, but probably never heard of. Ron Howard, who makes Apollo 13 the following year, all these things. His movie from '94 is a movie called The Paper, which I guarantee no one's ever heard of, but it's essentially the day in the life of a newspaper, and it's got all these big time people in there, and it's fast paced. It's even got George Costanza as a bit of a villain, and so he was a villain in Pretty Woman too. But Jason Alexander there, well worth the
What would a
watch.
movie be? Is it Marissa Tomei in that?
Yes, yeah, and I think
Glenn
Batman. I think
Close?
Michael Keaton
Keaton's in
maybe.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Tomei,
yeah.
Robert Duvall.
Duvall is the editor, and you even got Randy Quaid.
Yeah.
Pre crazy Randy
Wow.
Quaid. So Yeah, you just read those names and you're like, oh my gosh. But it's an awesome flick that if you ever see it pop up on TCM or AMC or something, watch it. It's worth it. And last but not least is I think Pulp Fiction is the iconic movie of '95, but the iconic movie for us at that time was PCU. PCU is hard to find. It's not on any streaming service. You got to look hard for it, but it was our era's Animal House,
Okay.
and it's got young Jeremy Piven and a young John Favreau, who would
Yeah, yeah.
eventually go on to control all of our entertainment with amazing things through Marvel and Star Wars.
Yep.
It's David Spade in an early role. I think he's but it is, like I say, essentially Animal House for the '90s. And Animal House is crazy, so on PC. You go back and watch Animal House, there are a few cringeworthy scenes. You're like, ooh, this did not age well. So this would be the opposite version of that. This is aged perfectly because it's politically correct university, and they protest everything. And so you're like watching it, like, oh my gosh, this holds up perfectly. But those are Doug's, few that you guarantee you probably never heard or seen any of these 1994
Give
movies,
them
but
a
it's
watch.
Quiz Show, Ed Wood, Immortal Beloved, The Paper, and PCU. You will not be disappointed in any of those 5 movies.
Ah, it's incredible, man. Well, now I got a list of things to do this weekend, so I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
We have when the kids go to bed, right? So.
Yeah, yeah. So I say here, I don't say any of these. None of these are kid, not bad, but none of them are kid friendly.
No, that's awesome. Well, hey, this was a fun one to do, and it's just a continuation. 94, man. What a
Man,
year I'm learning
what
this has
a year.
become, or this was,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
to be able
And
to dive
and
back into it.
we're only halfway there, so we got good stuff still left with music, TV, and just crazy pop culture.
It's gonna be good. Well, we
Yep,
appreciate it, and until you hop back on with us, you know what to do, but keep it twisted.
that's right.